Let's be honest, if you're looking at Tesla stock purely based on technicals, the stock looks great. But there's a caveat here, because it doesn't matter. If Nvidia gives us bad earnings and the stock plummets, that could negatively affect Tesla and our markets. Here in this video, I will explain briefly, that is, because we've talked about it many times here on the channel, how Nvidia's earnings reaction could affect Tesla. It could affect Tesla in a positive way or a potential negative way, but let's also be honest. I think Nvidia probably has a 95+% chance of falling after earnings. Just one potential scenario or outcome could be negative and one could be positive. We will also have earnings, more earnings that kick off tomorrow morning with Walmart and Home Depot, and those earnings will be very important for markets as well. Not to mention the Fed minutes will be coming out on Wednesday, and that will also give stocks something to react to. In this video, we will also take a look at the option positioning for Tesla and what I'm expecting by the end of this week and what I think is the highest probable outcome for Tesla. And I will tell you, it looks pretty good, and I'm excited for this upcoming week. So here to start off this video, I want to jump straight into it with the most important thing, that is Nvidia earnings. Now, I've talked about this many times, so I'm just going to give you somewhat of a recap on what I'm expecting and focus a little bit more on the potential positive or negative impacts Nvidia's earnings could have on Tesla stock. Now, first and foremost, like I said in the intro of this video, I'm expecting a lot of you guys are not going to believe me when I say there's probably a 95% chance Nvidia falls after earnings. Now, Nvidia over the past 3 earnings have given us blowout earnings, beats everywhere, nothing to bat an eye at. Literally nothing's been wrong with the last 3 earnings. You've gotten huge guidance raises, 2 to 3 billion above analyst consensus has been typical the past 3 quarters for guidance. That is huge. But what happened? The first earnings, Nvidia gapped up, and then the next earnings, Nvidia did the same thing as the first earnings and gave you huge guidance. Nvidia was up 10%, but ended up selling off by the end of the day to pretty much break even. Strange. Last earnings, Nvidia sold off 2.5% after earnings. And you kind of just had to chalk it up to the stock had rallied a lot and it needed to consolidate. And that was the opportunity for it to do so. At the time, Nvidia had only rallied about $110 or so heading into Nvidia's earnings, from about $391 per share to about $505 per share. And then you've seen about a 10% pullback. Nvidia stock ended up falling back to about $450 or so. So let's be clear. Nvidia normally rallies into earnings to some degree. The last 2 earnings, you've seen quite a pre-earnings rally associated with the stock. And then you tend to get a 10 to 20% sell-off afterwards. But this time around, Nvidia has rallied 50% since the start of 2024. Nvidia to start 2024 was around $470 or so. Today, it is $727. I don't think there's anything that Nvidia can say that will cause the stock to go higher at this point. Just judging off of the big beats and raises to guidance that we've seen over the past 3 quarters, Nvidia is going to fall. Question is, does Nvidia fall 11% as the options market is pricing in? Does Nvidia fall 5%? Does Nvidia fall 20%? I want to be very clear as well here in this video. For anyone that is long in Nvidia, I do not think selling Nvidia makes a lot of sense. I would personally not sell Nvidia, and I'm not going to sell the little position I have in Nvidia. I do think a pullback after earnings would actually be healthy, but really the biggest thing that I have a problem grappling with is what the full year guidance could look like, because you have to remember, numbers are going to look really good on a year-over-year basis for this quarter. You need to already know this. Last quarter, a year ago's quarter, Nvidia did $7 billion of revenue. They're expected to do $20.4 billion. I'm sure Nvidia is going to come in at like $22 billion. That would be my estimate. So they're even going to beat analyst consensus by probably $1 billion or $2 billion at the bare minimum, in my personal opinion. So I'm expecting good earnings, good everything across the board. The question is, do we get weak guidance? Now, we have seen GPU prices start to fall. You can see these articles from 3 days ago. It says Nvidia GeForce RTX 490 prices are on the decline in Europe, but still not seeing any bargains. Nvidia GeForce RTX 490 sees steady decline in prices globally. AMD Radeon RX 790 XT prices drop to $699, surpassing Nvidia's RTX 470 Ti Super. You're gonna find this, that your graphics cards, generally for like a computer, are falling in price. Now, that implies less demand. So maybe the gaming sector is going to be a little bit weak here, but that's not what's going to move Nvidia potentially down 20%. And, you know, if you wanted to just look at it like Nvidia's pricing at 11%, some stocks are, let's say, pricing in 10%, moving 20% in either direction, on good or bad news. So if we get bad news, Nvidia could fall over 20%. That is a possibility. Now, I don't know if these price drops have started to affect your, AI related GPUs. I don't think so. Based on the checks that I'm running, that does not seem like what's going on right now. But you guys got to remember, these H100, A100 GPUs that are selling for $35,000, they are MSRP or MRSP'd at about $8,000. So there's just been so much demand, Nvidia has been able to raise prices and raise prices and raise prices. Well, a lot of demand has indeed got pulled forward, and the lead times have started to fall from about 12 months. This was 3 months ago. It would take you about 12 months to get your hands on these higher end GPUs, these $35,000 GPUs, the ones in which Tesla's buying. And today it's about 3 to 4 months. So that either happens because there's a little bit less demand or there's more supply. If there's more supply and there's just bonkers demand, well, yeah, I mean, Nvidia might only fall 2 to 3%. That would be my expectation. If Nvidia gives us guidance, like pricing is good, yeah, you're only going to fall 2 to 3%. But if Nvidia does forecast prices falling on these GPUs towards mid or late 2024, that's where the stock could take a hit. Because right now, analysts are expecting a lot out of Nvidia for 2024. It's expected for full year 2024, Nvidia will bring in about $60 billion. Now, let's be honest. If Nvidia is going to do $20 billion or a little bit more than that for the last 3 months, the actual expectation that Wall Street has is probably about $100 billion. I think that's what is more or less baked into Nvidia. That would be, let's say 22 billion this quarter we're going to get numbers for, like 27 billion next quarter, 28 billion, 30 billion, right? That would give you roughly about 100 billion in total revenue. I think those expectations are far too high, especially if pricing does start to fall for the higher end GPUs. That's the question. That's the real question, whether or not Nvidia falls 10, 15, 20%. Now, on one hand, if Nvidia does fall 20%, that would be a market cap move of almost $400 billion. That would allow a lot of capital to make its way into other areas of the markets. But I think if you get those kind of demand fears and or pricing fears about Nvidia GPUs, it's probably not going to be a great thing for a stock like a Tesla. I think that could really send the markets into a larger sell-off, in which that wouldn't be positive for Tesla. Now, if Nvidia falls, let's say 2 to 10%, which is priced in currently by the options market, I think that would be a positive for Tesla and your small cap stocks. And then, of course, if Nvidia were to rally, then I think it would continue to suck the liquidity out of our markets, the mid and the lower quadrants of our markets, and that would cause a sell-off in Tesla stock. And for those of you guys that don't watch the channel, maybe you might be unfamiliar with the relationship between Nvidia, Tesla, and small caps. Tesla is trading and reacting more along the lines of your small cap stocks. It's not really reacting when big tech goes up. Tesla is not trading with those guys at all. In fact, Tesla's trading with small cap stocks. And over the past 2 weeks, any red day you have seen with Nvidia, IWM and Tesla have been up big time. especially Thursday. I mean, Nvidia was down 1.68%, the biggest down day for Nvidia in a long time. Tesla was up 7%, including the move that you had seen in after hours. I mean, there's no arguing this. There is a direct relationship here between Tesla and Nvidia. And that's why I'm focusing on this. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. At the end of this video, I will share my opinions on what I'm expecting. Now, this week for the earnings calendar, you're actually going to have some big names tomorrow morning. I talked about this in the last video, but Walmart and Home Depot are seen as bellwether companies. And no matter if the markets respond or not to Walmart's earnings, I'm going to be paying a very close attention to what is said. I will be listening or reading the earnings call because I want to know what Walmart's CEO is saying about Walmart customers. Walmart is by far the largest retailer in the US. And I think that's probably the best leading indicator that we have towards what inflation is doing, but more importantly, what the consumer is doing and what the economy could look like. Keep in mind, last week we got retail sales numbers for January, and they came in at negative 0.8%, which was far worse than negative 0.1% that we were expecting. So did sales slow down at Walmart? Is the consumer continuing to slow down? I think that will be important. And the markets generally do look at Home Depot earnings and Walmart earnings, these big retailers, as bellwethers to the economy. So I think by tomorrow morning, stocks will be reacting to this, but I'm not certain we're going to get a significant move in markets that I think should be warranted if we get bad news from Walmart or good news. I feel like it's pretty simple. If Walmart has, good things to say about the economy and the consumer, I think markets should at least stay where they are, if not go higher. If Walmart has some bad things to say about the consumer, about the economy, you definitely want to take note of that. And, maybe the markets do not trade downwards, but it's definitely something that you need to know. Nonetheless, Tuesday, after hours, Palo Alto, SolarEdge, Realty Income, Teladoc, Caesars, and Diamondback Energy, as well as Toll Brothers, will report earnings. And really this week, besides Walmart, Home Depot, and Nvidia, you're not going to get earnings that will really move the broader markets, in my personal opinion, but they will move their sectors like Palo Alto, cybersecurity, SolarEdge, solar companies, Teladoc, maybe a little bit of biopharma names, although that's a little bit harder to tell. Toll Brothers, obviously your home builders, suppliers could also, what's that company? Restoration Hardware? Is that the company that sells like really high-end appliances and furniture and stuff? So watch companies like that. Wednesday pre-market, Analog Devices, Wix, Global, HSBC, and Vertiv will report earnings. None of those are going to be too important. Analog Devices, in the grand scope of, where the markets are at, that could move semiconductors, technology names, but I doubt it. After hours on Wednesday, all about Nvidia. You will also get earnings from Rivian, Etsy, Synopsys, Lucid, Sonova, Dutch Bros, APA Corporation, Marathon Oil, and Suncor Energy. Rivian and Lucid could move Tesla, but I'm not expecting a huge kind of sympathy reaction with Tesla based on those earnings. Thursday pre-market, Moderna, Newmont, Nikola. I don't even know how they're still in business. Fiverr, Wayfair, barely, I should point out. Pioneer, and First Source Builders. Thursday and after hours, you have Block, Carvana, Mercado Libre, New, Booking Holdings, Intuit, Indie, Vail, and Live Nation. Friday pre-market, the only notable name that we're going to get is Warner Bros. Discovery. So certainly not the most exciting earnings calendar that we do have, but still some big names that could move, and specifically Walmart. I personally care about Walmart earnings a lot. Because let's be honest, if you look at the S&P 500, you are priced for perfection in the economy and for stocks and for earnings. If Walmart has bad things to say, I don't care what the markets do, that's a negative indicator for the economy and for what could happen to stocks down the line. So hopefully we get some good news, but if we get bad news, well, I'll bring that to you in the next video. And I guess a little bit of good news for this week. We don't have a lot of economic data, so you can really focus on Nvidia or any of these earnings or different trades that you want to do. You're not going to get blindsided by data when you wake up in the morning. Now, Tuesday, you are going to get the CB leading index month over month. really not going to move anything. That's it for Tuesday. For Wednesday, you are going to get the Fed minutes, the FOMC minutes. It does move the markets pretty aggressively when it comes out, but it doesn't tend to kind of derail the markets. It's backwards looking. The markets, they don't really care about backwards looking things. It's all about what's coming next. So it is highlighted in red. It will cause a move at 2 p.m., but it's one of those things. If the markets are really green on Wednesday, then the FOMC minutes, even if they're bad, they're not going to turn the markets red or cause this massive sell-off unless there is some kind of crazy new information, which I highly doubt, and vice versa. Now, you will get Fed Bowman that will speak at 1 p.m. on Wednesday. And that is pretty much it for your Wednesday. For Thursday, that's the day in which you could get some more incremental data, like the Chicago Fed National Activity Index at 8:30 in the morning, initial jobless claims, another leading indicator of the labor market, something I have been watching pretty close, but I mean, it's come in really low for a long time now. So not seeing any leading indicators suggesting the labor market is faltering. You will get S&P Global Composite PMI Flash, S&P Global Manufacturing PMI, and S&P Global Services PMI. Could be important, but I think by Thursday, we're all going to be reacting to Nvidia earnings, and that's probably what is going to dictate the markets. You will get Fed Jefferson that will speak at 10 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, Fed Harker at 3:15, Fed Cook at 5 p.m., Fed Kashgari at 5 p.m., as well as Fed Waller at 7:35 p.m. on Thursday. And then on Friday, you really don't have much of anything for data. Now, in regards to Tesla's option activity, as I mentioned in the last video, the positive order value is 71% with almost $350 million worth of trades in Tesla by hedge funds and institutions on Friday. So the last we seen from hedge funds and institutions, it was pretty positive activity. So we'll have to kind of wait and see where things shake out in that regard. Now, if we take a look at the bubble chart for this week's option activity in Tesla, I know that's definitely not correct. Unfortunately, it looks like we don't have any data for the option positioning here on Ortex for Tesla, but we can simply look at some of the most recent trades that are going through, and they are very bullish. You have an April 19th 240 call on Tesla. This was a $68,000 call position. February 23rd, $200 call, a $73,000 trade there. A March 1st, 220 call worth $272,000. A 202.50 call, a 207.50 call, a 200, 200, 220, $200 calls. So lots of activity around the $200 call, even extending into the 220 or even the 240 call. And if we just take a look at the option chain itself, lots of calls and open interest at the $200 call, 33,532. That would be about 3.35 million shares that would need to be bought by the market makers if Tesla goes over 200. So there's going to be a big wall. The market makers are not going to want to buy millions of shares in Tesla. But if Tesla does indeed rally because maybe Nvidia's earnings are good, but the stock just sells off, then yeah, you could see quite a rally this week. Now, you have another big block of call options here at the 205 call with 14,000 for open interest, about 1.43 million shares that would need to be bought by market makers. At the 210 call, you have another big block, 20,000 for open interest here. That's 2 million shares. Even at the 212.50, you got 9,000 for open interest, and that would be about 900,000 shares market makers would need to buy. And then the 215 and the 220 strikes for this Friday have about 14,000 a piece there. That would be another 1.4 million for the 215 strike, and for the 220 strike, that would need to be bought by the market makers. So believe it or not, there is a lot of dry powder here on the sidelines still in the options market that could drive Tesla stock higher. Now, if we're just looking at Tesla subjectively based on the charts, you have an inverse head and shoulders pattern. You have the shoulder here, the head, the inverse head, and the other shoulder here, and now you're breaking out to the upside. Now you have a gap to fill up to about 207. I think that looks pretty likely to be filled here. It wouldn't even surprise me if that happened before Nvidia's earnings. That's kind of what I'm expecting. We didn't really get any bad news or anything come out this weekend. There's no reason for stocks to likely continue their sell-off, in my personal opinion. If we do see some downside here this week for Tesla, I'm targeting this shoulder, this last shoulder that you just were at. This was before the 6% day. That would put Tesla stock back at about 189, potentially a round number of 190 as support for this week. But again, it really comes down to Nvidia, in my personal opinions, if Tesla stock goes higher or goes lower. So here's where things get really difficult. Trying to, think what's the most likely outcome for Nvidia earnings. I think the most likely outcome is actually Nvidia just beats everywhere, kills it all around. Just phenomenal quarter again, phenomenal guidance. It's higher than market's expectations, but the stock probably sells off 5 to 10%. That would be my expectations after Nvidia's earnings. In that case, as I said in the beginning of this video, that would likely be a positive for Tesla stock. And I think if Tesla can get above 207 and close above 207 and ultimately get above 210, close above 210, you got a pretty clear shot up to about 221. That is where your 50-day moving average is. And then potentially even your 100-day moving average, which is at $227 per share. I think you could get a pretty aggressive rally towards the end of this week on Thursday and on Friday, and even continue into the following week. And that's if Nvidia has really good earnings and the stock just sells off. It takes a little bit of a breather here. After all, it has an RSI of like 78 or something crazy. It's been overbought since January 10th, which is a little bit wild to see Nvidia this overbought for this long. I believe it's never been this overbought for this long. So that's, I guess, the question. Big sell-off or small sell-off? Now, the big sell-off, I don't think would be positive for Tesla. Now, I wouldn't expect Tesla to utterly collapse, but in that scenario, I could see Tesla falling back to about 190 because let's say 20% down move for Nvidia, bad news from Nvidia, is going to, put a dent into Microsoft, into Google, into all of your other big tech names. By some quote unquote experts' opinions, Microsoft has about $1 trillion worth of AI value, or some would call fluff or hopium, baked into the stock. So if you get bad numbers from Nvidia in this theoretical, bad scenario, then I think Microsoft takes a hit. I think all big tech does, and I don't think Tesla's immune at that point, just given, Tesla does have AI capabilities. The most realistic AI capabilities of any company. It's really the only company that is looking to deploy real use case AI out there in the world at some point. And I don't think the markets are, pricing in really any AI, value with Tesla, but I think it would still have a sympathy move and sell off. Although I think a 20% drop or more in Nvidia is probably like a 20% or less chance. I think there's probably an 80% chance things are just in line with expectations or better than expected, and we probably drop 5 to 10%. So in that case, I think it makes the most sense to be, constructive on Tesla this week, to be bullish on Tesla. As Nvidia does fall, that's going to allow hundreds of billions of dollars to go into the mid or lower quadrants of our markets, in which Tesla, it's kind of like if you had an industrial magnet on the fridge and other, fridge magnets on the fridge, and you throw some metal shavings up there, Tesla's going to get most of them. Tesla's the industrial magnet, the one that has lost a lot of value, that has went from Tesla into Nvidia, that likely goes back from Nvidia into Tesla. We've already seen this correlation and this relationship actually happening. So this is not theoretical. Nvidia down, Tesla up 6%. Nvidia down, Tesla up 2.5%. Nvidia down slightly, Tesla up almost 2%. That's all been within the last week or so of trading. 2 weeks or so of trading. And there's been other smaller correlations, but it's so obvious it's stupid at this point. So yeah, that's just my personal opinion. I do think Tesla stock could rally huge, bare minimum around 207 this week. On the higher end range, you could hit into the low 220s. If we do get that sweet spot with Nvidia earnings and that money does start to go back into Tesla. If you look at Tesla's RSI, it's at 49.15. Now Tesla tends to bounce about 30 to 40% off of the lows that it does hit anytime the RSI goes to 30 or lower. A 30% bounce from here would put Tesla stock at about 228. So, I mean, that would perfectly align with the 100-day moving average. Only by about 40 cents would you actually be off. So I think that does also make a lot of sense from that logic as well. And again, with an RSI of 49, Tesla's RSI tends to bounce from 30 to 70 over the next, month or two after, and you're already midway through that process. So I think that does likely continue. And the MACD has also curled up and continues to curl up and look pretty dang good right now. So let me know what you think about this information down below in the comment section. Does it make sense to you? Does it not? Provide your thesis and your take for this upcoming week down below in the comment section. Now, is Nvidia going to have good or bad earnings? Is Nvidia going to fall or rise after earnings? One thing that you can't argue with is what the markets are pricing in. They're pricing in 11%. So if Nvidia rallies 11%, that's going to put the stock at about $811. If Nvidia falls 11%, that's going to put the stock at about $650. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. If you guys want to come trade Nvidia earnings, come trade Tesla this upcoming week. Check out the link down below in the description of this video. And if you guys have not followed the X account, it's Michael Tyler over there. Go ahead and give that a follow as well. It's free 99, doesn't cost you anything to do so. Nonetheless, you guys enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. Well, I guess extended weekend, and I will see you in the next one.